Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome everyone to our next ICareLive series. I'm your host, Ryan the Lion from Radio 1 Baltimore. Be sure to hang out with me weekdays, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. inside the Lion's Den on Magic 95.9. Tonight, though, we are here, part of our ICareLive series titled Each One, Teach One. The Divine Nine takes on domestic violence, and a little info on the iCare program. It's an initiative that supports and highlights some great people and organizations that are doing some amazing things right here in Baltimore. And tonight, I have some wonderful folks that are a part of some historic organizations that are doing just that. Our featured special guest panelists tonight are Brother Merrick Moses, intimate partner, violence prevention coordinator for the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. MONSE is in the building. Also, Roxanne Fuentes. She is the executive director for HARBEL Community Organization. We also have tonight, also, Dr. Arvella Floyd-Whitehead is joining us this evening. We also have Dr. Tashima Ricks in the building tonight.
Hey.
Also joining us this evening is Robert Bizzell, Youth Opportunity Coordinator for MONSE. Welcome, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you so much.
How are you guys doing this evening?
Pretty good.
Great.
All right. Well, we got some folks here. We got a lot of squares on the screen. So I want to start off by just getting a little bit familiar with each one of you, find out a little bit about you and your organization, and why did you join that particular organization? Let's start with you, Brother Merrick.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here. I do have a D9 past from another incarnation. That being said, I want to mention my religious fraternity. I'm a member of the community of Saint Benedict, based on the Benedictine rule, founded in 529 AD. And so I was led to that based on just the commitment to service and love of humanity that I got from my D9 affiliation, my grade A D9 affiliation. And really, the principles of said organization radically changed my life for the better, and I'm ever so thankful.
Oh, awesome, brother. I didn't even know that existed, man. Thank you for dropping that on us. Roxanne, how about you?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Roxanne Fuentes, and I am a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, made in spring 1990, Xi Pi chapter at the State University of New York at Albany. So I guess you consider me an old head. It's an interesting story how I even ended up as a candidate for Delta Sigma Theta. The language has changed over the years. I was an only child up to the age of 14. So I loved my sister, but as far as I was concerned, what was she coming for? So I didn't have the luxury of growing up with a sister. So I really yearned for that. I really did. My family knew nothing about Greek life. I was the first in my family to even attend a 4-year university. So all of this was brand new. My grandmother, my Puerto Rican grandmother, thought I was joining a cult. She was convinced, but it turned out to be the best decision I made for my entire life. It was 14 of us. We are still thick as thieves. We have been through life transitions together, births, marriages, divorces, unfortunately, deaths, and so on. We have truly, truly been there. These women have exemplified the definition of sisterhood to me. People always ask me, why did you pick Delta? It's interesting because sometimes the circumstances will dictate who you pledge, depending on what's going on at that time on the campus. For me, it was different, though. I did my research. I'm from New York, but I went up to Harlem and went to the Schomburg Library and did all my little research. And at that time, that's who I identified with the most and who I wanted to become. They exemplified for me the definition of a woman and a woman of color. So that was it. It was a no-brainer for me. And it was the best decision I ever made. So as I stated, I'm an old head. I'm a proud member. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's what's up. Next up, let's go to Dr. Floyd-Whitehead.
Well,
I'm proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I was made back in the old days, June 26, 1986, in Moncks Corner, South Carolina, New Alpha Omega chapter. And my reasoning for it, I was 10 years old. I was at my grandmother's house in Philadelphia, and the young ladies across the street that would play with me, they were in college. And they were always so sweet, so kind. They would read with me, interact. We would do crafts. And I'll never forget, Camille was like, Arvella, I've got to go. But Camille, where do you have to go? I have to go back to school. She was a student at University of Pennsylvania. And I said, but why do you have to leave me? She says, well, my sorority, we go and we read with kids, and the things that I do with you, I do with the kids. I was like, what sorority is that? And my 10-year-old little girl self remembered when I got the opportunity, it was Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated. So the sisterhood, the scholastic, I was a nerd then, I'm a nerd now. So that fit perfectly.
Wow, great story, great story. How about you, Dr. Ricks?
Well, good evening. My membership with Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated began at North Carolina A&T State University in April of 1997 at the Gamma chapter. How I was introduced to Sigma, my college advisor, my undergrad advisor from my freshman year, well through after I graduated, gone to grad school, she was Sigma. And so I was exposed to it freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year. And she was just amazing. We kept in contact over the years. She gave a lot of guidance, and she kind of gave me that glimpse into what service looked like. I'm from New Jersey. I'm one of the first college graduates in my family. My parents are high school graduates. My brother's a high school graduate. So it was all a new experience for me. So to go from New Jersey to North Carolina to this historically Black college and have an advisor who truly invested in me and took me under her wing, and to see she did all these great things, and the core of who she was a lady of Sigma, it was a no-brainer for me.
Wow. You guys got some good stories, man. Hey, Robert, you got a little something to live up to here, buddy. Bringing it up. How about you, Robert?
So, I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and I was initiated into the fraternity at Gamma chapter at Morgan State University in the fall of 91. I was a member of the football team, and we were strongly discouraged from pledging. And I really didn't have any interest until my brother, he pledged at Phi Beta Sigma at Norfolk State University, their Delta Zeta chapter in 1991 spring. And I saw how we would be out, and people would beat the horn at the license plate. I'm like, hey, do you know him? And he said, no, it's a Sigma. So, and I'm like, what? Okay. We went to a party, and he just met one of our fraternity brothers, and they're talking for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, like they knew each other for years. And I'm sitting there scratching my head, like, what's that about? And I really respected him, and I kept my eye open, and we had a really strong chapter, and I had some people that I was close to and respected, and started talking to them. And fortunate for me that shortly after that, I had the opportunity to join that fall, and I never looked back. And as someone I'm very sensitive to those that they may say, what is it about, or I don't get it. I get it, because I spent right up until the day I pledged, I can relate to that. So I understand that, but it's changed my life. I had some struggles with finishing school, and my fraternity brother said, hey, come over here and sleep on my couch. So I definitely attributed to some of the things that I've completed, and I definitely would encourage someone else that's thinking about it to do the research and find an organization that fits them.
Yeah. One thing I could tell is that every one of these organizations not only affects people long term, but it also leaves, great history along the way. And we are here tonight to discuss another side of these organizations and what they do, and that's help people in the community. Now, each one of you are part of an organization, a great organization. But what was the motivation for you personally to become a human service professional? Who wants to attack that? Go ahead.
This is a very personal story for me. I grew up in New York City, Spanish Harlem, Boricua, Puerto Rican, absolutely. And I grew up, I was the product of a teenage pregnancy. My mom was 16 when she had me. And I was raised by my mom and my grandmother, very strong women in my family. As I got older, in high school, my mother unfortunately met a man, and I say that loosely, use that term loosely to describe him, and married him and was in a very physically, emotionally, and verbally abusive relationship. Luckily, my grandmother had some great insight and foresight and didn't let me go anywhere. And so I stayed with my grandma, but throughout high school, I remember coming home. We lived on the 17th floor with my grandma. And if I looked up and saw that all the lights were out except for my grandmother's room, I knew my mother had been beaten. And that was what was going on. It was severe. The stories were something that you would see in a Lifetime movie. And so I took that with me, didn't really realize that was going to be my motivation to end up in the field that I ended up in. I thought I was going to be an attorney because I want to lock them all up. But that didn't end up happening. I ended up also following a dream that appeared to me. I thought I was going to fix everyone. Well, that quickly went out the window. I remember as a young 20-something-year-old new graduate from undergrad, going to Columbia University, trying to get my MSW, and I was working with an agency named Victim Services Agency. They are now known as Safe Horizon. They're the largest intimate partner violence organization in the country. And at that time, I was working as a counselor, helping men who were sent by the courts for, at that time, domestic violence incidents or crimes. And I was ready. I jumped in there with my partner and I said, let's fix these guys, right? After the first group, my partner looked at me. He said, oh, you can't come back. They're going to eat you up. You cannot do it. And so I kept on pushing forward and studying, and quickly discovered that, yes, I wanted to do this as a living. I wanted to be a therapist. I wanted to figure out the theory behind it. I wanted to figure out how could someone actually get to this place? How could my mother, who was one of the strongest women I ever knew, find herself in this type of situation and relationship? And I wanted to learn the psyche of it all. And so I did, and graduated from Columbia University and became a licensed clinician. And that's how I ended up in this field. And I ended up doing a lot of different things in behavioral health, but my passion has always been helping victims of intimate partner violence.
Wow. Great. How about you, Brother Merrick?
I grew up in Queens in the 80s. And so approximately around 88, like between probably like 85 to probably the end of the 90s, it was just really a crazy time. I tell people what's going on here in Baltimore. I saw that 30 years ago. Yeah. It's kind of like I left New York at 18 to come to Morgan. I got a scholarship to Morgan. I find it interesting. From 18 to 49, I'm like, oh, this is kind of crazy. That being said, my cousin was murdered in front of a post office in 1991. He was 14 and I was like 16, 17. And so the long story short, I was compelled to get my peers on a track that didn't happen anymore. So an older cousin and I started an organization called CLIMB. I was the administrative help. He was the recruiter, and it was called the Commitment to the Longevity and Improvement of Male Blacks. And it was a rites of passage organization based on committed principles and the guidance of Kwanzaa Kwanzaa Kunjufu, who wrote The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. So we were coming from that level of praxis. And so when I went to Morgan, that just set me on fire, and I became an activist. And I've been an activist probably for the last 20 plus years, if I count what happened, maybe 30 years. But in every endeavor, I became a human services professional because what I realized was I can't fix anybody, but I can fix me. So I learn a lot from the people that I interact with because I see myself in them, and oftentimes they see themselves in me. And so that creates a relationship in which it's not just about helping somebody, but it's about helping them recognize the agency that they have to do the best that they can and live the best life. And so that's why I became a human services professional.
Wow, really, each one teach one there, buddy. I'm trying to tell you. How about you, Robert? What's your connection?
I'd say that my parents probably are responsible mostly for me doing the work that I do. They just had that spirit in our family, in the church, and in the community, my mother and father. And it just kind of shaped me and my view of the world, and how if you have something that, you should just at least be concerned about, the people around you. And, my father has an 11th grade education, but his level of compassion and his skill set will compete with any social worker I know. My mother, the story she tells about when they came from North Carolina to New Jersey, and the woman asked her what she wanted to do, and she said, "I want to help people like you." And she ended up working in an unemployment office for almost 30 years. And I just remembered a lot of the interactions. Our neighbors would come to the house and ask about how to get their checks, and just how she would help people in the interactions. And I think that rubbed off on me, and that helped shape who I am. And I went to Morgan with the plan on being a police officer anyway, though. But that changed shortly after that. I majored in. They didn't have a major in criminal justice, but I minored in it and majored in sociology anyway. And at some point, I just said, I don't know if that's for me. I don't know. I just felt more comfortable like pursuing working with folks, and I respect the officers, but I just felt like that doesn't fit me the best. And I started at a residential treatment center in the mid '90s. We call it group home at NCIA, and I've just been working with folks in every imaginable way since then. Schools, locked facilities, youth related activities. So I've just been blessed to have people allow me in their lives for these many years. And I happen to be now here at the city. It's an amazing job. I have a lot of contact with youth, and it's an amazing program that I just feel privileged to be a part of, and to be a first year social work student at Howard University now is kind of interesting as well. So I'm kind of excited about.
Excellent, man. Excellent. It's funny how your spirit can kind of bring you to a certain kind of calling, and just kind of let you know, like, this is what you should be doing. How about you, Dr. Ricks?
Oh, wow. Most folks don't realize, while I do in my full-time life, I work parallel to law enforcement. So I work with corrections agencies and law enforcement agencies to become trauma informed. But by trade, I'm a registered nurse. My introduction into human services started with being a registered nurse in Newark, New Jersey, on a Ryan White unit, a unit that's funded exclusively for the care of those that are HIV positive. So I started my nursing career fresh out of nursing school working there. Then I transitioned from New Jersey and came to Baltimore to work at Johns Hopkins on the premier unit with, Dr. John Barley. We had all his textbooks in New Jersey. So it was a dream come true, to come to the palace and be able to work on that unit with that provider and with that patient population. But what I saw coming from New Jersey to Baltimore was there was a tremendous need for help and healing. Initially, I didn't know how that looked. I thought it was just direct care. But I realized as a nurse, it was teaching nurses how to be nurses for this unique population, working with students from privileged backgrounds to really understand what the provision of care and what some of those social determinants are going to look like for Baltimore residents. That's going to look very different from someone who lives in Baltimore City versus someone who lives in Baltimore County, right close to the Pennsylvania border. And the skills you bring to the table to be able to provide care for those two very different populations, you're going to have a diverse skill set. So then I transitioned to nurse educator. And while being an educator, I had a colleague who said, you'd be really good in corrections. And I'm like, no. But I went with it, and it turned out to be such a pivotal moment in my career. I was able to really go behind the walls and be responsible and hold people accountable for the provision of care for those that are justice involved. And then transition into progressively more leadership roles, looking at it from a national level, looking at it also at an international level. What does the provision of care look like for those that are justice involved? And really taking a deeper dive into looking at, okay, this is where they are. How do we understand how they got there to keep it from getting any worse? And also making sure that we have our systems designed so that we don't re-traumatize them during those interactions. So all that's pretty much it all kind of aligned to get me where I am. And it kind of is that driving force. If I can come in and make a situation better than what it was, it doesn't have to be a large impact. It can be just moving the needle a bit. Then my job is done. And then I go on to the next area and make a small impact and go on to the next area. Mm-hmm. So that's just ingrained in who I am, and I try to make a difference wherever I am.
Yeah, we're glad we got people like you in the world. I'm trying to tell you, man. Dr. Floyd-Whitehead, what's your motivation?
Well, it goes back to my dad. We would be out places and perfect strangers would come up and just start talking to him and tell him their problems, or if he stopped to give someone a jump and they would try to pay him, he would tell them, take that home to your family. So I was doing my internship at the Citizens Complaint Center in DC Superior Court back in 1980. And I'm 19, 20 at the time. And a 17 or 18-year-old young lady came in, and she was a victim of intimate partner violence, domestic abuse back in the day. And when she was telling me the things that happened to her, I had to excuse myself, go find my supervisor, cry, shake a little bit, get it together, and go back in there and try to assist her, not only one, of getting a restraining order, but two, to see if we could help her escape the situation that she was in. Then fast forward 10 years later, I'm doing my internship for my graduate degree, and I'm in Newburgh, New York, and I'm a court advocate for Orange County Safe Homes. And literally a house that I had been in that day, on the news, there had been a stabbing due to domestic encounter. It's a calling. I told the God of my understanding what I wasn't going to do, and he's still laughing because, many years later, like Miss Roxanne, I have done a little bit of everything. However, my passion, I've worked behind the walls. As a matter of fact, Dr. Ricks and I think we worked at Baltimore County Detention Center together at the same time. I ran a unit there. It's who I am. It's the service. It's the service to all mankind, which of course is our motto. And yet also there's a piece of therefore, but the grace of God go I, because there are several decisions. If I had gone left instead of right, absolutely, I would not be sitting here. I would be on parole or probation, or possibly, serving some serious time. That's my motivation. And I thank people for allowing me to be on their journey with them.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I thank you all for sharing those stories, And if you are just joining us, I would like to welcome you to our ICareLive series. Each one teach one. The Divine Nine takes on domestic violence. And if any of our guests have any questions or comments, please feel free to share. Just type it in the chat and we'll have our panelists address it. Now, I do want to ask, because all of you individually work, different sectors of the human services professional gamut. How often do you guys see survivors of domestic violence or intimate partner violence? And how does the trauma of going through all of that affect their lives? I'm sure you got millions of stories. I just saw the smoke coming from everybody's head. But yeah, sure. If you could think of one or two instances and share, please. How about you, Doctor? Oh, go ahead, Roxanne.
I'll jump in. For the agency that myself and Dr. Floyd are the director and executive director, and Dr. Ricks is actually our board chair for a HARBEL community organization, we see this every day. We see it, though, from a different angle because we actually work with the offenders. Okay. And so you talk about a whole 180, me personally, working with the offenders now. I think it comes with maturity, age, life experience, where I understand the pathology that they are experiencing being abusers. And as we are aware, 9 out of 10 abusers have been abused themselves. Yep. So this is a perpetual illness that we have to address. So asking what you see on a daily basis, I see contradiction on a daily basis. I see a need for us to take a different approach when we are addressing intimate partner violence. So at HARBEL, we have put our heads together because the reality of the situation is 9 times out of 10, they're not leaving each other. This is just the reality of what it is. In 2023, we have a new culture that has arisen that is so alarming and scary, where the value for human life has almost disappeared. The value of self-worth has almost disappeared. Hope is fleeing us. So when we speak with our clients, I hate to call them clients, our consumers, our human beings that come to the door asking for help, most of them come to us at a state of hopelessness and helplessness, whether they are male, female, heterosexual, gay, lesbian, it doesn't matter. Intimate partner violence it does not discriminate across age, gender, or sexual orientation. What we did find was this incredible phenomenon during COVID. We experienced a rise, I don't know if it was a rise, but it was an exposure of the fact that our adolescents were suffering at an alarming rate intimate partner violence. As young as 11 years old is what we experienced at HARBEL. So we had to jump into action and we had to figure out, okay, how do we address this? And the reality is, you had the old saying, meet the client where they are. Well, I don't necessarily believe that. I think sometimes we have to meet the client and take them to where they need to be. So at this point, what we discovered was, instead of separating the offender and the survivor, because I don't call them victims, the offender and the survivor, why don't we give them the tools that they need once they have gone through the intervention that they need to go through, done that work on themselves, gone through our AIP program, which is our abuser intervention program for the offenders, do the individual work with the survivor, and then see where their mind is, see whether or not they want to a reunification of their family. Many of these folks have children, some stay with each other out of financial strain, and they can't have 2 households. Well, how can we make this look healthy? How can we help you problem solve? How can we teach you how to argue and disagree with your partner without it becoming violent? You'd be amazed at how many couples I've seen. I asked them, do you know how to fight? And they look at me and they said, that's our problem. We fight every day. I said, no, I know how to fight. Do you know how to disagree and be okay with it? So that's the approach that we are taking now. I can, off the top of my head, I can probably ramble off about 100 horror stories, but we see them every day in the news. We see that it affects every aspect of our society. I don't care how well off you are or how poor you are. It exists everywhere. And I think that what COVID did was it took the blanket off of the baby, right? It exposed what was already there. And now we can't put the blanket back on. So HARBEL also designed a program for our adolescents suffering from intimate partner violence, for both our abusers and our survivors. And intimate partner violence for children doesn't necessarily mean a boyfriend or girlfriend. It can also mean violence in the home, violence from a family member, a sibling, an uncle, a cousin, that may not be detected by Child Protective Services because it's become the pathology of the home and it exists and it's normal for them, right? So we had to address that. We are also now developing a specialized program for our LGBTQ plus community because we know that there are some different nuances that we had to tweak so that we could be sensitive to that population, and understanding that a member of the LGBTQ plus community may not be comfortable sitting in a group with heterosexual males who are talking about beating up their girlfriends.
Right.
So it is a problem that is clear to me. It is a societal problem, is a multi-generational problem. We have to approach it differently. We have to keep our heads in the sand to think that the same treatment is going to work that we did 30 years ago is doing a disservice to everyone. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but
oh man, tell it like it is though. And I think it's great because when we think of domestic violence, a lot of times we do think of justice survivors, and they need help. But those offenders, they need some serious assistance as well. Now we do have a question from Wendy Lee. She asked, for those who are not working in the human services field but have pledged a Divine Nine organization, do you see a path for others to help reduce domestic violence and strengthen our communities?
Oh, definitely. I think that it begins with the youth, and starting at an early age, teaching youth and demonstrating in front of them what healthy relationships look like, what communication looks like, what does rejection look like, so that they understand as they grow up, they know that, hey, this isn't appropriate. I know me growing up, I can't speak for all of you, but me growing up, on the playground, if a boy teased you, it was because he liked you. Or if he, pushed you on the ground, it's because he liked you. We learned you can subtly learn that that's a way to display affection. So I think it starts with teaching youth and modeling to youth healthy relationships and healthy communication and how to healthily resolve conflict and disagree.
I just want to add to what Dr. Rick said. One of the things that we're particularly concerned about is the rise of sexual assault on campus. Mm-hmm. And based on what Dr. Rick said, this behavior snowballs. And culturally, we get really wrong messages about how to have relationships. I was telling somebody, I was on the bus one day, and I heard one young lady say to the other, now these kids couldn't have been no more than between 14 and 16 years old. Well, he don't love you if he don't beat you. So, right. And so I was going off the bus, I said, that is a lie. That is not true. Get some help. And I walked off. Right. And what it did to me, it alarmed me because I didn't realize how young these children were experiencing some of these things. I mean, I have a high ACE, adverse childhood experience score myself. However, I didn't perceive that this was also going on as much as it was going on. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the things that we have to remind ourselves is that our cultural nuances and landscape around us sends terrible messages to our children. So one of the things I think that D9 folks can do is, particularly on the grad level, really keep a hand on your undergraduates. And that looks like really telling them what's going on campus and how to date and what to look for, right? Because I know when I was on campus, we never got any of that. And I've actually had friends who were sexually assaulted on campus. And people didn't think it was a sexual assault because she drank too much. And this is the 90s now. These ideas still pervade. So and again, I'll say, as intimate partner violence coordinator for MONSE, we are equipped to help folks on the grad level that are dealing with undergrads to have this conversation. It can be a teen crumpets conversation on healthy relationships, whatever you want to do. But MONSE has the resources that you can use to actually have these conversations and have them in a manner where people feel safe and people feel supported and people feel that they can trust those in the room for help.
If I could be more specific, for Wendy Lee, come to HARBEL. Come to HARBEL and volunteer some of your time. That's what D9 can do. D9 needs to go back to our roots.
Yes.
It's to take the village to raise our children. We were founded on the suffrage movement. We were founded on civil rights. D9 needs to step up. Our numbers are astounding. Just in one organization, could you imagine what we could possibly do? We put our minds to it to make this movement. I teach at Morgan State University in the grad program for social work as well. And so I see it firsthand what's going on campus, just at Morgan. And I'm going to say, Wendy Lee, please, you are welcome to come by HARBEL. You are welcome to contact us. I will offer HARBEL space to invite any and all D9 members who would like to come, and we can have a strategizing meeting and we can decide what we're going to do for a community service event in our community. It's time to stop talking and let's do something about it. I had 12 kids at my facility this morning who were talking about the violence that they had been exposed to. How nice would it have been to have some D9 members there, male and female, to take on one of those kids under their shoulder, listen to their story, just sit there and listen to these children. So I'm going to challenge Wendy Lee and the other D9 members that are here. I'm going to call it out. And I'm going to tell you, if you see something, say something.
Right.
That's what you need to do.
Right. You know, I'll be calling you tomorrow, right? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, at Phi Beta Sigma, we have an auxiliary organization that we pour into for young men. And, we feel like role modeling and meeting with them and just giving, I guess, a curriculum and just reinforcing that, what's appropriate and what's not. And I think that's really important for our young men. And I think, something I've heard is that, this can stop, men can stop this. And I believe that. And so that's one of the tools that we use. And also, if, other than Sigma, I'm sure the other fraternities, they have the same capability and probably have those same organizations. But as far as the D9, to Merrick's point, I just see this moving on to the campuses. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there to just have these conversations, create ambassadors to disrupt that thought. My camp, when I was on campus and stayed in a dorm, there were things that went on, in the 80s and 90s, that are just not appropriate. And so I think we do have the ability. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think that is actually our plan in our office, according to Ms. Lee and Merrick, so that they have a plan to actually get on those college campuses. That's something that I recall, as the former sexual assault response team coordinator, here in the mayor's office. I know that on campus, the SART coordinators, the Title IX officers were key. I think that also that's just something that folks really don't want to talk about all the time. When I took my daughter to school, the first thing I did was look up the security issues, the sexual assaults and different things. But, I don't fault the college campus for not wanting to put that out on Front Street, but it's a conversation we need to have. And I think that, we can push that. And that's just something that I look forward to kind of just working with and getting back on those college campuses and creating those ambassadors and creating that thought. I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Definitely. Oh, great question, Wendy Lee. And I don't think you were expected to get challenged after asking that question. But I think that is a perfect example of just what we need to do. Come together. You said it very well, Roxanne. I mean, the Divine Nine, the numbers are astronomical. There's so many of us that are in those organizations. And if we can, unite and come together with, I can only imagine the amount of progress we can make and the kind of work we can get done. But once again, if you're just joining us, welcome to our ICareLive series, Each One Teach One. The Divine Nine takes on domestic violence, presented by MONSE. Please, if you are part of the program right now, please share. If you have a question, you have a comment, drop it in the chat, and you might get challenged. I don't know.
I do want to bring up something if I can, Ryan.
Yes.
We've been talking about males being the perpetrator. And what we are seeing is that we have females that are being abusive physically, sexually, spiritually, emotionally, financially, with their cisgender male partners. And we have had to create special groups for them. I would say we've had 4 at a time to be able to hold a group. And that's something that we need to look at too. And definitely when Brother Merrick brought up the ACEs, that is a significant, I think if there is an 8 or 9, you can get a score of 10 on an ACE, adverse children's experiences. If you get a 6 to 8 or 9, you're in that range of having the propensity or having the possibility of being abused and or abused, as Ms. Fuentes has stated. So we need to keep our eyes open and not be, I'm going to use the word, I guess, pigeonholed in beliefs that it's just males that batter. Females do batter as well.
And I think, too, the numbers, looking at some of the statistics, I know we were looking at it, I want to say it was the latter part of last year when we looked at some of the domestic violence and intimate partner violence statistics that we saw in terms of like the data reporting. Yes, you saw the males were being charged. They had the higher percentage of charges, domestic violence related charges, but the females had the larger number of peace orders. So it's happening. It's just the end result looks a bit different. The impact is the same, but the end result looks different. So how do we come in with the charges? How do we come in and make that impact before it gets to that DV charge, before it gets to a peace order?
Yeah, good point.
Well, if I could add, I mean, I've been in the space of men that have gone through this, and I've heard them talk about feeling like their hands are tied, the stigma, fear of retaliating and having professional repercussions. So it is real. And also, I'd like to add, just it seems like there's a different. Like there was a time when if you saw a girl and a boy trying to fight each other, that people would stop and say that shouldn't be. But I would love to hear from all the folks here about how we just can see a young man fighting with another teen girl, and people stand around and watch and take pictures now. And my work as a youth, working with our divergent program and teens, it feels like it's more acceptable, and it's just a phenomenon that is absolutely in effect. People don't really jump in anymore like they used to. It's not the stigma attached to it.
Oh, to Robert's point, there have been correlational studies that put the level of violence among young women. They tracked it with how many hours of reality TV show they watched. And so the more violent the reality TV show and the more they consume, their propensity towards violence increase. Now they didn't say it was it was a relationship like this. They just noted the correlation. And I would say that there are popular shows right now that I will not name because I will not give any gas to that truck of destruction. Right. Okay. That are actually promoting fighting on TV. There's a person that's from Baltimore that is supposed to be some type of rapper. I'm old school, so they tell me she's a rapper. They say she's a rapper, okay. And her rapper boyfriend.
Hip-hop started in the Bronx.
Yeah. Yep. I ain't gonna go to Queens, Brooklyn, and the Queens, Bronx ride with you. We're gonna do that after camera. But the long story short, they're like fighting on camera, like in front of their families. And it's very disturbing, but people really like that show. And so we really need to have cogent conversations with our young people around how they feel about that and why that level of violence is not okay. And putting in that also that level of violence being celebrated like, well, this is just hood love. Like really making Black love a pathology. I'm not really about that life.
Right.
Really need to have these conversations so our kids know that that's not how Black people should be loving.
It's not okay. Yeah.
Not okay. Not at all.
I could interject though. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but this is multi-level. It's you have to go back to the root. And the reality is, if you look at the stats, you look at the data, our children are having children at younger and younger and younger ages. And so when you have this increase in teenage pregnancy, some even preteen pregnancy, and you have babies raising babies, and in most instances, it's the television raising the baby, or it's social media raising the baby, you know, they're romanticizing and glorifying intimate partner violence in front of our faces every single day, whether it's on Instagram or it's on reality TV or it's Twitter or whatever it may be. You know, what makes the front page news or the headline of the day is not the accomplishments of our Black and brown students, but it is the last fight that happened at the club and who got arrested. And, you know, it's just multi-generational. And so when you have situations where grandma's walking into our facility and grandma's 35, there's something to be said about that. And then we look and say, well, they need parenting skills. Well, where were they supposed to learn these parenting skills? Please let me know. And you're correct. The days of not tolerating, the community members not tolerating that type of violence has gone. It's gone, right? We can recapture it. But, you know, I remember being a kid, grew up in Spanish Harlem, and if I did something wrong and Miss Barrios caught me, she had the right to tear me up, right? And then when my grandmother got home, oh, I was going to catch it again.
Okay.
And don't dare me be disrespectful to any one of those adults. Those days are over. People are terrified to say to anybody's kid because they think they're going to get shot.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, you know, when you see couples fighting and somebody intervenes, and then the couple turns around and attacks you, I think that's what people are afraid of because of the culture, this new culture that has invaded our society. You know, it's interesting. I know we're speaking on this macro level, but the reality is it starts with one conversation. It starts with one person. I don't want our viewers who are listening right now thinking that there has to be this huge master plan in order for them to be involved. It doesn't. It can be that one child that you know, you suspect is probably not eating at night, or you hear being beaten at night, and you're terrified to go knock on the door, but call somebody, call the police, call for help. It takes one conversation. Yep. So, you know, my charge to everyone listening is talk to one person, just one. Ask them, are you okay? And if you're not okay, hey, can I help you find some help? Just one.
I agree 100%. You never know what's going on in your neighbor's house.
To your point, I actually, you know, I've heard my neighbor in the house, who a former neighbor, but right over my fence in the backyard, and we've heard things and suspected things, but you know, one day she apologized for the police and the noise. I didn't know what she was talking about, and she talked about how he was out of the home. You know, she had an order, but you know, maybe a couple of months later, I saw him again, and then. I've always just, and she would not speak when he was around, but I just sort of tried to stay supportive, and I didn't push myself on her, but just if she wanted to speak, I was always there waiting for, you know, always open. But one day she just said, I'm leaving him. And she was gone. And she talked about a couple of organizations that I was working with at the time. It was pretty encouraging. And, but it did take her, you know, 3 or 4 efforts, and that just really enforced what you always hear. So that was a pretty interesting first look experience. And, you know, like when you work with it all day and then you actually are talking to someone over their fence wrestling with it, was pretty eye-opening for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Robert, you know, I had a similar kind of situation, man. I lived in an apartment complex, and it was really like late evening, and we got a knock on the door, and you know, there's nobody knocking on my door that I don't know that's coming. So I'm like, who is this? And I'm looking out the peephole, and I don't see anybody, and I'm like, somebody's playing games. I open the door, and it's a little kid, the little kid that lives right across the hall from us, and his door is wide open, and it's yelling and screaming, and he's asking me to come help his mom. Uh, I walked in the apartment and kind of saw the husband standing over her, you know, and I kind of just intervened. At that point, I was a little nervous. I didn't know what he had. I didn't know, you know, I'm like, but I said, you know, hey, brother, please, man, please, 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 you know, this is not the way to handle this right now. You know, let cooler heads prevail. Just leave, go away for a little bit, get on the phone, talk about it a little bit, but just give it a break right now. Like, you know, and so for me, experiencing that, I felt really bad for the kid, because for him to probably get enough strength to say, let me go get help, you know, what that must have been like for him. So I'm asking, you know, you guys, how do we reach out to kids who have experienced these kind of incidents, these kind of situations? How do we reach them? How do we get to them? How do we help them to understand?
Well, at HARBEL, what we're doing now is we are doing our summer crew program, and that's creating righteous enlightenment within, is what the acronym means. And it's directed towards our children. So right now we have children as a free program. It's open enrollment. Anyone can come. And it is a safe space for children to speak and share about their experiences. You'd be amazed. I had a young man today, sweetheart. He just started talking, and we're listening to him. And he's talking about how much he would love to be able to go outside and play. And I said, well, why can't you go outside and play? And he says, oh, no, there's too many drive-by shootings. There's too many fights going on. I tried, but I heard gunshots and I had to run. And so, you know, our children are just suffering. This little boy, you know, I just wanted to grab him and hug him. And then he just started talking. He just started talking about the fights that go on in school. And what became clear to me is that this poor child is surrounded by violence at home, in school, and even at the park. And so when I asked him, I said, well, are you okay with coming here, you know, during the summer? He says, yes, this is great. I'm not nervous. I don't have to worry that someone's going to come in here and shoot me. I mean, this is the kind of language that this poor child was saying. So at HARBEL, we've created a safe space, as safe as we can make it, a safe space for our children to come. And I don't want it to just be our little children. We also want our adolescents there. We want our adults there, but we want everyone to know that they can come, sit down, sit in a group. We want to go old school, right? We want to go back to the days where we could just sit down and have a rap session, right? It doesn't have to be formal. The kids don't have to think it's structured. We know it is, but you know, just give that vibe where they feel like, yeah, I can be okay here. Nothing I say here is going to be used against me, kind of thing, right? I'm not going to be chastised. I'm not going to be punished if I say or put my business out there, right? That old keep your business inside the home kind of stuff. But we have children as young as 5 years old. As 5 years old in our program right now, who have had some type of exposure to violence. And so, and please understand, especially for our viewers, when I say exposure to violence, it doesn't necessarily mean that this particular child has to have direct impact from a hit with someone. Exposure to violence as young as 0 years old, okay? The sounds of gunshots, the sounds of violence, the sounds of yelling or loud noises or crashes can impact children in utero. So, you know, you ever heard that expression, oh, she had a nervous baby. She probably had a nervous baby because the baby was exposed to all kinds of secondary trauma that she didn't even realize was going on. So, you know, our children, I had a little boy today, 5 years old. Ooh, he had a lot of energy all over the place. My daughter's 21 now, so it's been a while since I had to chase down a 5-year-old, right? But this poor baby, we tried everything with him. The staff tried everything, video games, the iPad, sitting down with him and playing, coloring. Nothing worked. This baby found a cardboard box and sat in the box and was calm as could be. And the reality is that clinically, this child needed a safe space. And having that enclosure for him felt like he was protected and safe. So that could just give you a peek into what we see. So that's how we have to help our children, creating safe spaces for them to come and be heard. Be heard. Half of these children just want to be heard. Yeah. And that's what we're doing.
Excellent. Hey, Robert, I know you work with young folks. Do you have any resources that you could share?
Well, I know that we really lean heavily on Merrick and Company, our intimate partner violence with Wendy Lee around getting those young people, because I work with the Sidestep Youth Diversion Program here at MONSE. And it's a diversion program that instead of youth being arrested, transported, and charged at the Department of Juvenile Services, they are treated or connected to services, and that charge will not go on their permanent record upon completion of the program. But a concerning number of those cases that come to me are directly are dating, assault against an intimate partner, and the number got so high that actually, I think the conversation I went to Wendy Lee and American Company around really building something up stronger so that we could have a revolving opportunity for people to take part in some education around it, because it was very concerning to me. I mean, it was one young man who was headed to I'll say an Ivy League school for a football scholarship, and he assaulted his girlfriend at a party for some reason. He was very comfortable with it and followed up with text messages, which was really damned him. But I think that he ended up losing that scholarship as a result. Mm-hmm. And even though, it's just something that I just see that has been more acceptable lately, even though we know this has been going on for some time. But the environment seems this is a little bit more forgiving, it seems like. So, but we do lean on our office. The health department is doing a lot of work with to save our schools, that we rely on them. And we really want to build this work out and continue to just try to be more innovative around how to reach them.
All right. Well, I know we only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to make sure we get as much information and resources out for the folks. So, Brother Merrick, talk about Divine 9 versus domestic violence, the initiative, and how can people get involved with the project?
Really quickly, so we had this brainchild, and what we did that because the Divine 9 has over 100+ years of community action. Most of the scholars and leaders in our community from in the 20th century were members of the Great Eight and the Divine 9. So that being said, we are offering to help you fill your community service requirement. What does that look like? That looks like if you want to have chats about the DV, if you want to have workshops about healthy relationships, if you want us to make presentations at your Domestic Violence Awareness Month presentation, we are open and happy to do that. We will help you plan the celebration. We will help you get notoriety around that, particularly with our comms team. And this is a way for us to continue to give back to our community. We have to use our influence for good. We love step shows too. So if y'all want to do a step show during DVAM, I'm down. I was never good at that. That's why they made me spokesman, because I could not step. Okay.
Don't tease me with a good time.
I was gonna say it's been a minute.
That's why I'm calling y'all tomorrow. And so if people really want to make this happen, I can be reached again at 443-966-3365, and you can reach me at Merrick.Moise, MOISE at BaltimoreCity.gov. Let's make this happen, y'all. Our babies are dependent on it. Our babies need this.
That's what's up. Roxanne, give out HARBEL's info really quick.
Yes, please come and join us on Wednesday, June 28th at HARBEL's annual meeting starting at 5:30. The first 100 people get free food, free Kona ice. There's going to be a live band playing. It's going to be a really, really good time. Come see us. Come see what we're doing. Come find out. Come meet us and see if you can come volunteer and spend some time. We're open Monday through Saturday. Our phone number is 410-444-2100. In most cases, we'll get you an appointment within, if not the same day, next business day. So please come join us. We are on Facebook at HARBEL. We are on Instagram, same handle. We are on Twitter, same handle. And if you want to reach me, it's rfuentes@harbel.org.
Well, we want to thank MONSE so much for making this absolutely possible. Thank you for everyone that joined us. Please make sure that you spread the word. Look, we are definitely stronger together, and no matter what you're going through, you are not alone. All right, there's help, there's resources. Please call someone. Just reach out. I want to thank each and every single one of you for joining us tonight and sharing. That's right. That divine nine love is real. And we absolutely love and appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.